Today we're going to talk about skin appendages. So some of the appendages that are on your skin include cutaneous glands, and those are all exocrine glands. Some of the glands that you find on your skin are sebaceous glands and sweat glands. You also have hair on your skin, hair follicles, and then nails that include fingernails and toenails. Oil glands are also called sebaceous glands because they produce an oil called sebum that is important for lubricating the skin and keeping it from getting dry. It also prevents brittle hair on your head and your arms and legs and things like that. And it kills bacteria. Most have ducts that empty into hair follicles, and so oftentimes an oil gland is in conjunction with a hair follicle, though others do open directly onto the skin. And sebaceous glands become activated at puberty, and that's also incidentally when body odor starts because there's sometimes bacteria that are associated with those oil and sebaceous glands. In this microscope image, you can see where the gland is located. So there's secretory cells. Those are what produce the product. So those surround the hair follicle. And then here you can see the hair growing in the hair follicle. That's eventually going to grow out of the opening in the skin. And then the duct for the sebaceous gland is here, and that's going to deliver the product from the secretory cells to the hair follicle. Sweat glands are also called sudoriferous glands, and they produce sweat. They are widely distributed over your skin, so you can sweat on most surfaces of your skin. There are two types of sudoriferous glands. So eccrine glands open via a duct or a pore onto the skin surface. They produce sweat, and that's just completely clear. Apocrine glands empty into hair follicles, so they're kind of like sebaceous glands, but they have a different product. They begin functioning at puberty, so they are not active in small children, and they release sweat, but the sweat also contains fatty acids and proteins, so it's not a clear liquid, and that can also contribute to body odor if bacteria are involved. So in this image, you can see where sweat glands are located underneath the skin. So they release sweat via a pore, and the gland is located here. And then you can also see in the microscope image a cross-section of one of those ducts. So here's the opening inside of the duct where sweat can travel, and then the cells around it that are stained purple in this image are what produce the secretion. So that's what produces sweat that goes into the duct, and then will eventually go to the surface of your skin, and because sweat is meant to cool you, when it evaporates, it takes body heat with it. Sweat is made mostly of water, but it does also contain salts, vitamin C, some metabolic waste, and then through the apocrine glands only, some fatty acids and some proteins. The functions of sweat include helping your body get rid of heat. It also can excrete some nitrogenous waste products. And then it also has a slightly acidic pH, and that will help to inhibit bacterial growth, which is great because you don't need to get infections on your skin. And any smell that's associated with salt or sweat actually comes from bacteria that are living on your skin. Sweat itself does not smell. Another skin appendage is hair. Hair is produced by hair follicles, and it consists of hard keratinized epithelial cells. Melanocytes are what produce the pigment for hair color, and hair grows in the matrix of the hair bulb, which is located in the stratum basale of the different layers of your skin. In this diagram, you can see the anatomy of a hair follicle. So there is connective tissue and blood vessels that feed the follicle, so that's located sort of in this connective tissue area. And then there's melanocytes, and so those are the cells that contribute to creating hair color. And as people age, they become less active. That's what causes hair to go gray or white. And then you can see the growing hair is this way, and it grows out of the follicle. Hair does have its own anatomy. So in the center of the hair is a structure called the medulla or the medulla. And then there's a cortex that surrounds the medulla. And then on the very outside of the hair is something called the cuticle. And it's the most heavily keratinized part of the hair, and so that's what protects it from drying out and things like that. So here you can see the three layers. So the center is the medulla, and then the cortex, and the cuticle is the outermost surface. The structures that are associated with hair include the hair follicle, so that's where the dermal and epidermal sheath that surround the hair follicle are located. And then there is the erector pillae muscles, or pilli. They are made of smooth muscle, and their function is to pull your hairs upright when you are cold or frightened. So if anyone has ever had goosebumps, then you know exactly what this is, right? This, when you the hairs on your arms, for example, stand up on end, that's because of the erector pillae muscles. And then, of course, associated with hair follicles are also those sebaceous glands and the sudoriferous glands that produce both sweat and sebum. The muscle that's associated with the hair follicle looks like this. So this is the erector pillae muscle. And when it contracts, it pulls the hair follicle so that the hair stands straight up. And that's what gives you goosebumps or goose pimples. On the next slide, we're going to look at the cuticle of a hair so that you can see what the cuticle looks like. Notice how the cuticle lies like shingles. That kind of keeps water out and it keeps the hair from getting waterlogged. If you have a really flat cuticle, you usually have smoother hair. If the cuticle gets damaged, the shingles tend to flake up a little bit, and that's everybody who's experienced frizzy hair knows what that does to your hair. It makes it a little bit bigger, a little more volume, and a little bit less smooth. Another appendage of the skin are your nails. So those are on your fingers and your toes. You have fingernails and toenails. They are scale-like modifications of the epidermis. They are heavily keratinized, so they're very thick and they're very water resistant. The stratum basally extends beneath the nail bed, and that's what is responsible for nail growth. So that's where the nail structure originates. And the lack of pigment makes them colorless. So your fingernails themselves don't have a pigment because, unlike hair, they don't have associated melanocytes. The structures of the fingernail include the free edge, that's the part that you cut, and then the body is the visible attached portion, so that kind of makes up the majority of your fingernail or toenail. The root of the nail is embedded in your skin, and the cuticle is the proximal nail that's fold that projects onto the nail body, so that kind of protects the growth zone. In this diagram, you can see how the nail grows, right? So the free edge is where you cut your fingernails, that's where it's growing. And then the body of the nail is the part that, if you like to get your nails done, that's where you paint, right? And then at the base of your nail, the half moon looking structure is called the lunulae. And then the cuticle resides kind of at that proximal nail fold, and so it protects the growth zone of the fingernail. And then where the nail matrix is, you can see that's where new fingernail is being produced.